So I will call the Douglas Cable License Subcommittee meeting to order at 1:22 PM on December 9th, 2022.
Great, thank you. Thank you for being here, I appreciate it. Okay, so, again, John, thank you. I've worked with John many years ago when he was with Comcast, and we haven't, he was tangentially involved because in a Western Massachusetts matter, but other than that, he's been busy with it, and I now have a bunch of charter licenses that are up, and so it's good to see you. Douglas, you have so many towns, they give you so much, so it's really hard to be familiar with the town, I'm sure, until you do the renewal. But Douglas is a pretty amazing town in a lot of respects, but with respect to cable, they run their own access program, PE&G. And on the government side, as you probably saw from the ascertainment, that they cover live, in most cases, every government meeting of every board, every committee, no matter how large and no matter how small. I've never worked in a town that did every meeting. And that's in addition to, the educational and a growing and hopefully even further growing public in terms of covering lots of events and then having producers going forward and some now. So that said, I thought we'd just begin, although we've done a lot of the introductions, just introducing ourselves briefly. I think it helps to know the background. And sure. I want to start with John. John, if you want to.
Sure, John Marr, I work at Charter Communications, also known as Spectrum. Looking forward to working with everybody on the committee.
Bill Solomon, special counsel, worked in cable for 25 plus years, handled the last Douglas license renewal, which was a good process with Mr. Green, right? I think. And, no, not Green, not Dave Green, but I just forget the gentleman's name. Tom
Cohen.
Tom Cohen, yes. And, one person show, so to speak, and did a lot and cared about the company and the licenses. And so it's good to be back in Douglas. We've been working on the ascertainment and what their needs are, and we look forward to describing that. Pat?
Pat Aldrich, cable coordinator, just run the day-to-day of the cable systems here.
Go ahead, Fred.
Fred Fontaine, Chairman of the Cable Committee.
So Kevin Morris, I'm Chairman of the Board of Selectmen and the Chair of the Cable License Subcommittee.
Good. I thought we'd just begin with something we had done recently, and that is to have Kevin and Fred just describe, what community television PEG access means to Douglas, what it meant, how COVID's affected things, how the world going forward and hybrids affected things, and giving John a sense of, what it means to the government and to the residents and businesses of the town.
So to kind of jump off what he said, Pat's done an outstanding job making sure that all of our government meetings are, if they're not live telecasts, then at least they're up and available relatively quickly for the members of the community to kind of tune in and take a look and see what's going on. The big usage for us, and I can say on the selectmen side of it that's been helpful, is we have a pretty decent sized senior citizen committee. Well, I shouldn't say committee, but demographic. And this is their access to our local government because a lot of them don't have a lot of mobility. They don't get out of the house. The hours that we meet is at 7 p.m., so that's a little late for them to be driving. So it's really the government side of it, being able to broadcast these channels out to our senior population is extremely important to us because it's really giving them access into, what's going on in town, when our town meetings are, events, things like that. And I know it's also very helpful with, some advertising that we do for our annual Oktoberfest, which has become a very large deal. It's actually, I think, the #2 event in New England every year, just behind the Big E. So, I mean, that's where it's very important, at least as far as we're concerned to us, on making sure that our residents still have access to that. I'm sure Fred's got additional.
I would say pretty much the same thing, except it's people actually do watch the meetings. It's useful, and I've worked with other towns in their cable, where they don't do meetings, they do more public access television. And not that that's not useful, it has its use, but I think what we do here is very useful and puts the resources to good use.
John, of course, being familiar with towns, it's, when we go to meetings at night, and a Tuesday night, a Wednesday night, a Thursday night, a Monday night, and you can't find a parking space at a town hall. And it's because there are so many committees and boards meeting so many times a week at all times of the day. And that's why one of the, expanding the staff, and going forward particularly is important, because there's just so much more than what even obviously one person could handle. Pat, let's see, we have the ascertainment document. Do we have copies for?
Yep, I gave
Okay,
John a
good.
copy over there.
Great. And maybe, you want to maybe just run through that, and also maybe if you want to do your presentation first, do you have a video?
Sure, yeah, I had just kind of a brief slideshow that goes over some of the history of, where the programs come from. Got a couple of different screens, whichever one. Actually, I'm just going to switch this. Oops. So, first license, we actually had no funding. It was a single channel. We used old security cameras, VHS decks on just playbacks on loop. There was really no budget, staff, classes, equipment, no public access. The selectmen were literally recorded by the Board of Selectmen's secretary from the table, and the bulletin board was just maintained by office staff in the town. Second license, Charter Communications, they have a $60,000 capital grant with $35,000 operating plus 3% annually. And the cable committee really started to put their initiative in place where they wanted to start recording all government meetings, all open meetings. And that's, at the time, that was the Charter TV at 67% of the homes in town. So the upgrades that they did in that license, they got a Latronix Nexus digital playback system with a bulletin board, primary and secondary recording systems using DVD and VHS decks, so backup, digital with the VHS backups, remote point tilt zoom cameras in the resource, which is the room we're in right now, and the community room, which is a room right next door that I can show you after if you're interested, and it's a much smaller scaled down version. We had mini DV portable cameras for public use, so we would let people, loan out the cameras and have them create their own programs. We started buying iMac computers for editing and administrative use. And we started sharing the keyless entry system with the municipal center that allows us to get in and out of the building, and then we have our own lock on our door as well that we can beep in and out of the cable room back here. And then we installed an AC cooling system for the cable room, because at the time there was no heat or AC, so it would get very, very hot in the summer and very cold in the winter. In that license, they created sort of a limited coordinator position, and they had the first cable coordinator who was here basically to recommend maintaining new equipment, schedule the playback, and run the bulletin board. But the cable advisory was still doing a lot of the tasks like scheduling staff, doing the payroll, teaching classes. They created a new position called recording assistants, which are people who would come in just to record the government meetings. And that's actually where I started. I became a recording assistant that first year. So in 2008, there were some staff changes, and the cable committee kind of consolidated all of the tasks into a larger position called the coordinator. And that's, I actually moved up and became the coordinator. So I took over all the additional tasks and opened, Facebook, Twitter, and also we started having recording assistants who had been previously only recording government meetings. We actually opened up so that they could record public events as needed. So if something happens at the senior center, we can have a recording assistant scheduled to go down and record whatever that is, a sing-along or anything that they have down there, which is quite a bit. They do a lot of stuff down there.
Patrice keeps them busy.
Yeah, certainly. Our third license, which is the license we're currently on, we had a starting operation at $43,000 with 3% annually. We had a $169,000 capital grant. The cable coordinator job increased hours from 19 to 29 hours a week. YouTube was implemented for the online video access. Up until that point, we had had sort of a privatized database, and we moved it out to YouTube to be more shareable, more accessible to the folks. And we also became part of the Internet Archive digital video archive, so that piggybacks on the back of our YouTube uploads. When we record there, it goes straight to the archive as well. So then we have archive videos that go all the way back to 2006 when the program began. The Cable Advisory Committee then voted to become ad hoc, and the cable coordinator position became a department head within the town. And the goal of recording 100% of government meetings was realized within this license.
I just want to correct one thing. I know you know this, and I didn't notice it here. The initial year on the operating was the 47,000, actually.
Oh, okay.
37. But then the next year, it went up to 100,630.
Right, yeah, this is a much simplified,
Yeah,
kind of simplified.
So, and I can give you the numbers there, John. So it went from 47,037, and then it went year 2 to 100,000, I'll round them off. Year 3, 115,000, year 5, 100, no, and then after year 3, then it increases 3% a year, so that by year 10, it'd be 142,714. But the way we did it was that if the town needed less, they'd let you know. So since that time, although the costs have increased and we have the needs going forward, the town has required less than the maximum amount needed. So the maximum amount, again, would be 142,714 under the license, increasing 3% after year 3, and that's materially below that at this point, but has gone up and will go up. And as we'll talk to you going forward, the idea is to keep the same parameters of the cap, but because it's a town that watches dollars, the conservative town. It's not a town that says, well, if this is available, we're just going to spend it. And so, as you see when we go over what the view is going forward, is to keep the same paradigm, but to keep the same paradigm where these folks, if they can, and they have done it for less than the license provides for, that's what they'll do it for. So, but anyway, so that I'll give you the numbers, but that was too simplistic in a sense.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It didn't capture year 2, which is a big jump.
Yep.
Because the first year, the idea was to stay where they were, and then in year 2, go to the 110,000. Good.
Yep, I agree. So in this current license, we did some upgrades to this room. We installed AsiaKey Pro Rack digital recording units and the Asia Hilo live streaming units. So moved away from the DVDs and the VHSs and straight digital with the ability to go HD, even though right now we're still running everything in SD. In the resource room, we had a PA audio system installed, which has mix-minus capabilities for the audience and the table. Really upgraded our PA system in this room. We live streamed the Board of Selectmen on YouTube. And a broadcast server, we retired the Latronics Nexus, and we switched to Tightrope Carousel and Cablecast, which is a much more modern broadcast server as compared to the Latronics that we had. Just some changes to in 2020 in COVID, or this room right here that we're sitting in became the town's remote meeting hub, and we really utilized the cable computer networking, the audio-visual equipment that we have on hand, and our staff, and kept the meetings going, kept the town going through that period. So it kind of highlighted to us how important it is for us to have kind of state-of-the-art equipment. And just the future, we intend to keep maintaining the open meeting coverage. I think that's kind of like our bread and butter. That's where people really find the value in our program. Just providing government transparency to the community. We intend to continue to provide hyper-local coverage of community cultural events, which, like you mentioned, Oktoberfest or, Memorial Day parades, anything happen at the senior center, at the
Sports.
library. What's that?
Sports.
We don't do sports,
Okay.
but,
Would you like to, or you?
it's a discussion, for sure.
Meet with the rec committee,
Yeah.
so, because we have a lot of sports that are in town. We have baseball, we have the basketball leagues, we have youth soccer,
Yep.
so plus all the high school sports.
Yeah, so even with what we do now, there's plenty that
Yeah,
we.
and one of the
could
things, of
expand
course, I
into.
need to say is that with the one-man thing, the focus has been this, but that and they've talked about that, to try to expand it more into the public realm, but with one person and part-time people, it's been possible to, to do the outreach that you need to expand the program. In a world where there's less newspapers, less coverage, you're the coverage of the local community.
Nope.
Do you have any high school kids that help you?
Not currently, but that's an idea that's been floated around.
Talk
too,
about
is-
who you have.
Right now, we have, it's part-time positions within the town. People come in and do the meetings or public events, and they essentially just run the equipment and record the meeting, record the public events, or they go out to the event with a camera and record it. But yeah, there's been some discussion about maybe creating some sort of, even, a lot of the high school kids have to get community hours and stuff like that, so maybe there's a way to mix and match some of that too.
And there was also the idea of having more than just yourself, right, going forward.
Right, well, I do
Talk about
have
that.
the recording assistants, but yeah, I'm doing the coordination and the administrative work and sort of running.
Right, but what about going forward? Were there some thoughts, I thought you had thoughts about having a...
Yeah, no, if we expanded the programs, then, we could have a couple of different positions within the programs where we have, maybe the executive director, and then below them, maybe the public, and then government, and starting to split stuff out and get programs running and up off their feet. But
One of the things I'd say, and when I was here last time, in the town administrator, met the new town administrator, and he had mentioned that when he came on, the one thing he noticed was how much work Pat did, and he insisted that he get paid more, because he realized, it wasn't a long-term solution just having one person, even if they're paid well, and who's responsible for more than one person can do in a growing program. Let me ask you this, after you're done with this, let's just discuss, take John and us through again the ascertainment, after you're done with the...
yeah, just the last little blurb there, just what we're looking to do with the next license is to keep our equipment upgraded on all the fronts. We have recording, we have audio, we have a couple different scenarios that are in the ascertainment document. But, including the remote capabilities, what we did during COVID was sort of figure out how to use our stuff in that, which I'm sure everyone had to do that, but on the fly. I'd like to have some design in there to cover it going forward in a much more thought-out way. And just seamlessly integrate all the multifaceted different parts of the system in the face of the unknown going forward. And that was really,
Okay.
that was the end of that.
If you just maybe walk through so
Sure,
that John...
I'm just going to switch the
Sure,
camera
oh, you can put it, okay, good,
back. Doing double duty here.
good. John, besides your house, where's your office, in theory? Worcester, okay, that's right, that's the headquarters, yes. Good, yeah, that's right.
So the ascertainment document?
Yeah, let's just walk, John, and folks, just through, just the, what the sections, not the details, but just
Sure.
what the section's about.
Yeah, intro and overview just has some of the discussion about the document itself, what we have
Yep.
in here.
I want to go over the summary and goals. Again, you've talked about that a little bit, but...
Sure, yeah, I mentioned some of them in the slideshow, but continued coverage, increased coverage for cable casting and of public events, upgrades to the existing equipment, which we have 2 main rooms that we record in, and then we have mobile units that we'll send out with just cameras and tripods and things like that. Increased equipment needed for live and cablecasting or remote hybrid meetings, so the meetings where people are on something like a Zoom or a Avaya, and with live people in another room that's being
And
recorded.
you have some origination locations, regardless how it's done, that you have down here, the Adult Social Center and the library.
Sure, yeah, so our adult social center is very active. They have a lot of programs down there, and generally we record them and then bring them back here, edit, and then upload to the broadcast and broadcast it out after the fact. And there was a lot of interest in possibly doing live programming there, with folks at home can be watching the senior center stuff live as it happens
Yeah,
instead.
and we'll also talk about, the library was in the current license, but the town at the time decided not to proceed ahead with it. But that's something that going forward, they'd like to be able to have either done by charter or through themselves, and funding is to connect the library to the municipal center. All right, and then the next section, all right, there's the details of Douglas. There's this section, yeah, let me get to the staff you've gone over, your duties. On the page that has the cable access coordinator duties, I mean, we'll just point that out, that, you know, a myriad of obligations and duties that are required. These are other, the recording assistant, do you have a recording assistant now?
Yes.
These are the part-time positions?
Yeah, and that's the
Okay.
part-time position that records.
So the next page, I think, John, is helpful, and that's the,
So,
Yeah.
are you the cable coordinator?
I'm the cable, yes, yep,
You're a town employee, right?
correct.
that's correct. And the,
You have this part-time person.
So, yeah, right now we have 2 at, our most, we had like 8. Folks kind of fall off sometimes, and we've had 2 very dedicated folks who do it right now. Trying to figure out right now if we'll definitely need to be hiring at least 1 or 2 other people going forward.
So there's 29 hours, that's split between 2 people right now?
No, the 29 is for just that position, for the cable coordinator position, so I do 29 hours a week. But that's considered full-time in their town documents.
And then these part-time people, how many hours do they work?
So it's the way that we operate the part-timers, we have, it's a 5-hour minimum per meeting. So they come in for a meeting and they get paid for a 5-hour period, you know, for that period. So it's technically it's a maximum of 19 hours a week, but they keep track of the actual hours that they're working, because you just never know with meetings. It could be a half hour, it could be 2 hours. They have no knowledge of what the meeting's going to be like, so they thought that was the fairest way to pay those folks.
And we can have these folks discuss it too, but my understanding was that going forward, there's need to supplement hours or a person to the work you do. In other words, to do all the things you do now, and to further expand that you're going to need some assistance on top of the 29 hours that you work.
Right, yeah, if we...
So you need to talk, I mean, step back and talk, for John, just give him the broad view of, here's what we do, and here's what I do, and going forward, here's what we'd like to do, and to do that, then we generally need what? I mean, that's the issue. And you folks,
6, you have 19 hours a week that's for the part-time person, I assume?
Correct.
So right now, it's you 29 and someone else is doing 19.
And it's not 19, sometimes it's 0, sometimes it's 5 hours a week, sometimes it's 10 hours a week, so it's,
So
yeah.
that's an average per week.
Yeah, we have to limit them to 19 a week,
because,
because of otherwise they'd be considered
Okay.
right, under 19, they're considered part-time. But,
okay. So let's go through the duties, and we'll circle back to the idea of what the town may need going forward. I mean, the way it's worked so far is, if the town can get it done with the folks it has, it gets it done. And going forward, the plan is to say, we're going to have the same paradigm, the same numbers under the license, and you're going to try to get it done as cost effectively as possible. And if it takes a little more than that, well, you have some room between the cap and where you are to meet those needs. So rather than say, we want, these guys saying we want 5% gross revenues, and they're saying, you know what, we'll continue with the paradigm, we have a cap. If that cap, by the way, was over 5%, then it can't be that high, whatever the number is. You know, if it ever was more than 5% of the gross revenues, it can't be that number, it is, you know. So the idea of going forward is to continue from where the license now leaves off, with the 3% a year increase, with these folks continuing year to year to say, hey, you know, we only need this much, and so we don't need it, or we need a little more because this is the work we're doing. So let's go to the government meeting. So I think this is puts on paper what we've all talked about, the government programs. That's on the following page, which in 2006 began at 35. You see it increasing 110, 180, 2021, 216 government programs, you know, which is a lot. And then the archive. There's the next is the flow of how the work gets done. I think Pat's discussed a little bit, the personnel and the technology. This is, again, just the equipment in the different rooms. Now, the capital needs are on the next page in dollars, and then the backup. So Pat, you want to take us through just the
page
general,
9.
general category of capital needs, and on each page, just generally refer to what area? Editors, field equipment, in-studio cameras. Want to just take us through briefly? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, most of our investment is in this room where the bulk of the meetings happen in this room. So it's you know, important to us to have this. We have PTZ cameras, three cameras that are remote controlled back there, digital recording, you know, video switchers.
Is this the community room or the resource room?
This is the resource room. And then, like I said, the community room is next door to this room. It's a much smaller room, a little more scaled down. We don't have a PA system in there. There's no need for one. And we just have audio recording and video recording, digital, same exact setup, but just, you know, scaled down. And then, you know, the second biggest investment then is the broadcasting equipment that we have. We have a broadcast server and some RAID systems built in. And then really, we've been running it pretty good with just a couple of, you know, a couple of iMacs, MacBook Pro.
Yeah, let's just go through what the needs are going forward, though. I mean,
Sure, and then, but then we have camera kits, which are just camcorders with tripods, external microphones that we can send out to, so there's other rooms in this building where people have meetings when it's really busy, and we'll send a camera down, or we'll send a camera down to the library or to the high school, or, you know, when we have annual town meeting at the high school, we'll set up multiple cameras there. We'll operate our equipment in their venue, essentially. And then, so I mean, that's the bulk, really, of sort of our inventory and library of equipment needs, but, you know, going forward, I'd like to implement, like I said, some more hybrid meeting equipment, stuff like that. And then just continue.
Left-hand column, years 3, 5, 10, so can you explain to me that column?
Sure, so, looking at it from a replacement standpoint on how often we may need to replace each of these items. So then considering what the cost is per, and then how many units we own, and then the times needed. I'm just laying it out within the next license, what we may need to upgrade or replace.
In year 3, you'll need those camera kits. Then in year 5, you'll need those other items listed next, correct?
Well, is it that they're replaced then, or in other words, or is it there's initial and then a replacement, or is it, so let's take the 5-year items. Are those year 1 and year 5, or just year 5?
Okay, so to explain it, so like the iMac 27 workstation, I consider that a 5-year item.
Right, so when are you going to get it first?
In a 10-year license, I would need to replace it. Yeah,
5,
what's that?
in year 5.
Correct.
And you get it in year 1, too? In other words, the issue is, do you, some of these things you may need right away, and then in year 5, some of the things you may not need right away, and you only need it in year 3 or 5. So,
Right, yeah, so just wherever it falls on the schedule of being replaced.
so are there some things that you need to replace now?
Not according to this, if I'm reading and understanding it correctly.
So it looks to me is that the first thing that we need to look at is in year 3 of the renewed agreement, which would be camera kits at $1,600 a piece. Is that right, Pat?
Yeah, let me double check here on something, because I wasn't looking at it that way, so I'm sorry if it's confusing the way I laid it out, but.
No, it's okay.
I think also just the way that we had laid out sort of the capital is that it's not so much that we would need like this much money year 1, this much money year 2. We're going to spread it out and then do our, I was looking to do our replacements and upgrades according to what we agree to here so that I can even them out, you know what I mean, throughout the years, throughout the 10-year license. But also according to when we need to do it, you know what I mean? So,
So going across that first line, in year 3, you need camera kits.
Which page is this now?
6,
right, we have 6 total units, so three of them are older units. We have 3 that we just bought, because we shuffle when we replace things, you know what I mean? So the 3 that we bought originally will be on a different schedule than the other 3, but within the 10-year license, we'll have to replace them all. So I'm just trying to consolidate.
and what does times needed mean?
I don't have the,
So times needed would be throughout the 10-year license. So, okay, so the years column is what I'm, so camera kit, I would say would last 3 years before we need to replace it.
yeah, so.
Now, we don't always do it in 3
Right.
years. If they're fine in 4 years, then we'll do it in 4
Right, we
months,
understand, but
for
the.
budgeting purposes.
Right, so it is what it is, which is whatever, but that's how I understood it too. You're saying some things need to replace in 3 years, some in 5, and so but there are some things that are needed year 1, year 2, and maybe if you haven't
That's not how I broke it out, yeah.
Well, no, the issue is, I can't tell from here. In other words, I see that, I understood this to be that, camera kits are replaced every 3 years.
Correct.
This RAID storage and the presentation laptop.
Every 5 years.
Lasts for 5 years. But that doesn't tell us, and maybe you need to look at it and let folks know, that doesn't tell us, are those things needed in year 1 or year 2, in other words? So I know the point of that is not to say it's only needed 5 years from now. So I think maybe what would be helpful is if Pat, if you would take that list and do your best estimate. You never know when things break or when they need to be replaced, but if you would take that list and do a good faith judgment as to when those items need to begin in the next 10-year license, whether it's immediately or year 1 or year 2, so that we have then the things when they're needed, and then we know from your work, and you can say again, and if it comes in year 1 or 2, then you need it in year, 3 years later, or 5 years later, or you do it once, and it lasts for 10 years, but we can't tell from that what the total capital need is, at least estimated. You never can predict 100% the future without knowing where you need to start from. So I think the best way to do it is not to do it now, but to put that together for the committee and for John, so they.
Well, I do have it. I mean, it's, so,
Okay.
comm room audio, I'll need to do that next year.
Okay, so let's make sure we're looking at the same, are we all looking at the same page?
Is that, but let me just ask, that's how you'd like it broken out, is what I need for the next 10 years?
Just trying to understand the page.
Yeah,
Okay.
to make sure John's looking at the same page. Tell him what page.
But that's not part of the document.
Oh,
So
okay.
this was just the page we're looking at in the document was the page just to show what we have, how many times I think we'll need to replace it throughout the 10-year license. It's not aimed at year 1, year 2, year
Right,
3.
so
I
what,
can give you that information if that's
Yeah.
important to you guys, then I can break that out.
we could do it now, or we
Yeah.
could do it after, but if you have it now, that, and it's accurate, that's fine.
Well, in your presentation, which
Yes.
was great, by the way.
Thank you.
You said you upgraded a bunch of stuff. So this stuff, the last 3 items on page 9,
Yes.
talks about 10 years. So this stuff you don't foresee, is that the stuff you just upgraded, so you don't foresee needing to replace any of this stuff till year 10?
Right, but yeah, so, like you said, let's say like a big one, the resource room video,
Yeah.
so that's a 10-year item, and we installed it in FY17, so in 2016, so we'll need to replace that in FY26, which is in the next license, so we'll only need to do that once in the next license. So do you see how I'm breaking that out? So it's a 10-year, the resource room rack, community room rack, those are both 10-year items, but we purchase different pieces of those items in different years. So it's a lot more broken out, but I see what you're saying. I'm just saying that this is more just a generalized, to get an idea of what we're going to need to replace during this next 10 years period.
So it's useful life
Correct.
is what this year is calling.
Right.
Yeah, long
Yes.
story short, yeah.
You got it. Okay.
I just want to let everybody know I have a hard 2:30, I gotta go.
Sure. All right, so I think it might be helpful is that if we provide, you know, the subcommittee and then John, your other sheet, you know, afterwards, put that together so folks know what the estimate, all these things are estimating. You don't, you know, capital and a license is not like we can predict now everything that happens and we just need that. I mean, there's new equipment, things break, there's new things that come about. So the capital number isn't just based on what you can predict now for 10 years. But that said, why don't you take your other sheet, put it together and then afterwards provide to the committee and then to John. The best guess at this point, in terms of things you can foresee, when they would need to be replaced, given, as John said, you know, the most recent replacement, and then we can apply, you can apply to that the useful life of it. But I just want to, I knew those were the useful life numbers. It wasn't like you didn't need it for 5 years or 10 years. So that'll give John a better sense of your view of the world going forward now. And of course, the things, there's got to be room to buy other things.
And it's almost the exact same list, it's just one has specific
Good.
years and one doesn't, you know what I mean?
Okay, so with that, that'll be, I think, be very helpful. And the next choice, not really,
Can I ask another question?
sure.
So in your presentation up there, for 10 years, 43K and 3% annually, and 170,000 in capital.
The 43K is inaccurate, though.
Is it 47K?
No, it's that's a small part. It was 47K, but then in year 2, the license went to $100,630. So the license provided,
It wasn't a 3% increase.
it goes from 47, rounding it off to 100,000 to 116,000, and then in year 4, that 116 goes up 3% a year. So in year 3 is 116, year 1 is 100, again, rounding it off, year 2 is 100,000, year 3 is 116,000, and then beginning in year 4, it goes up 3% a year. So year 4 would have been 119,000, and then after that, if you know, done the math, it goes to 123,000, 126, 130. For year 10, it's 142,714. But the license is written that these folks can say, we don't need that much, we'll take less. And the most recent year, you're at, was it 80?
I'd have to take a look at that, but to clarify, on the slide, what I was saying on the slide is that that's what we did. So The license didn't lay that out. We just went up 3% a year. So instead of, the license guideline had us going much higher the second year, we didn't need that much higher number, so we just went with a 3% increase. So we've kept it at a very conservative rate going forward and trying to keep it as, tight to the budget as we can.
So we didn't give you 100.
Correct.
grand
That's right.
a year?
Right. We asked for much less.
Right. And the proposal going forward is to take the numbers that are here and to increase that from the last number being 142,714 in the license, to increase that each year by 3% going forward, with the same specific language that says they can tell you, just give us less, and we're fine that year. So the idea was to keep the paradigm. It's still the same watchful, frugal, conservative town that it was before, but to keep that paradigm and to have these guys tell you, and they can, we can write it to say that if they need more, they'll tell you, or, rather than if they need less, they'll tell you, which I think is what it says here. So that way, they have room to grow, consistent with the existing license, but their history is, and will continue to largely be, that if they think they don't need more. The real question is, I think the fair point is that, and I think the last time we met, at least this is the sense I got, is that as this program has expanded, that they need more than just Pat and the folks who work a few hours a week. And I think that's in your document, that they need some help, whether it's a halftime or however it is, that they need more than one person to do a program that's that big. Now, will that take it to the maximum allowed? No, it won't. And on the capital, to sort of move it ahead, what they're looking for on capital is to keep the same capital number as last time. So the last capital number was $169,000. And that,
Say 119 on page 9.
I'm sorry, say that again,
On page 9.
of the ascertainment?
Yep.
Well,
So that would be the operating.
I don't have the last paper one here. I should have opened the other one.
Okay. Do you want me to print another copy?
No, it's okay. I had it on the computer, but,
So he's talking about this line here,
yeah.
which would be more of the operating.
Okay, well.
And the capital, we do have,
That is, let me just, that is as Pat sees what's needed now and his estimate of what's needed going forward. So the idea would be, at least as we've talked about it, is the license would have its license numbers that were the cap. And that Pat's saying that at this point in time, he sees $119,000 with an estimate of increasing at 3% a year as his sort of goal and best guess of where they'll be. And the idea in the license was to say, just like a 5% cap, is that, well, that's the cap, but that's what he thinks they would need to begin with, and his goal to increase 3% a year. And in fact, I think given the nature of the town, I think they like the idea of trying to stay within certain budgets. But based on our last discussion, they don't want to commit by a license that nothing could ever change, but that their track record is such that they're going to try to limit the increase each year in the same way they do with their own budgets. And part of it is like it's a town budget, so that they have the same mentality, that it's not like anything's just free money here, that it's something they care as much about this money as they do about any other money. So that was Pat's view of where they need to be to fulfill this program now. And our idea on the license was just to continue what they currently had. And I think in the license it says they can ask for less. I think we could just change that around to say that if they need more, they'd let you know. So it's not like, so the idea is they hope to stay where they are, but if something changes, then they'd so inform you, and the cap would be the cap that's in the license.
So if I could help a little bit with that. So Douglas is a notoriously, like, we're very fiscally conservative. And a good chunk of I've been on the Board of Selectmen for almost 11 years now. And we have a very long track record of, we usually budget conservatively and we still come in under what we budgeted for. So there's usually a larger, I don't know how much you know on municipal finance, but there's always turnbacks that go to free cash. So we run every department that way. It's police, fire, highway, the cable department. So when we present in, like, going through these financial things for our cable license agreement with you folks, it's a very conservative number that we're bringing to you, and I can almost guarantee to you over the course of the 10 years, we'll never ask for above that. It's just not how we've ever managed our finances. One of the biggest things, like, and if our finance director ever heard you say free money, you would be in for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm saying, we don't think it's
Lecture the heck out of you.
Yeah, no, I said, we don't think it's free money, that this is real.
I'm pretty sure she bugs this room. She may run in.
Yes, yeah.
Start yelling at you about it. But we are very conservative with anything that we ask. We're very conservative of how we spend our budgets. And like I said, I'll almost guarantee to you, at the end of every operating year, there's always a turn back. So we usually come in under those numbers. So we're Douglas is a town that's rich in history of doing more with less. And I think our highway and police and fire, they ran on shoestring budgets for years, and we just managed to somehow get it done. And it's kind of been ingrained into the culture of Douglas of, we just ask for what we need, and usually what we're asking for is a little bit more than what we actually need, and we'll end up coming in under that number.
And John,
This is what you think you need, right? These numbers on page 9, right?
Correct, yes. And to highlight what you just said, even within the last license, we've never maxed out what we've asked for from charter, even according to what they laid out. It's always been a much less number than we've sort of been entitled to every year.
And with the idea that
Because we're just running with what we need.
as I see it, I think we discussed that they shouldn't be bound by, their frugality shouldn't be such that if things change, that they 10 years, 4 years ago or 5 years ago at that point, that they can't change. So, John, in the current license, it says, and I did this with the town, and Kevin was on the board. On the 119, that goes up 3% a year. Subject to the above reference right of the issuing authority to provide 120 days notice of a lower dollar amount of PEG access support as the issuing authority may determine. So the idea was to come in with these numbers and to say, they can say in a year, you know what, we don't need that, give us less. And that's what they've done for 10 years. And so the idea isn't just, is to say, all right, let's continue with that, that they have a number now that Pat looked at, that he thinks, can run it as, and he foresees, but it's a 10-year license, and they don't want to constrain themselves to that. What they rather do is, based on their track record, is continue with the same paradigm, and if they don't need it, which has been the case, and likely will be the case for 10 years, then they won't ask, they won't need it. Now, we could change the language, because I think, we don't have to have, it's that they have to tell you they want less. I said, I think we could turn it around just to say if they need more, they'll let you know, they'll give you notice. That way, the default is you just keep on going at the 3%.
We've been cutting checks the last 10 years. You guys have been sending money back.
No, they haven't cut the checks.
We've just asked for less.
And-
So
yeah.
our second,
Going in that way, like, I was talking more on the municipal side, like our departments turn back in. When Pat does his budget to actually remit for payment for charter, so he asks for, like, if we're, and I hate to use the word entitled to, like, it's just not one of my favorite expressions, but contractually, if it was $85,000, and I'm just pulling numbers out of my hat, but Pat says I only need 60, he would remit for 60.
Right.
So internally, town.
Well, to let you folks know. So in other words, I think the default's been that it became a sort of a practice to say, just increase the 3% a year, but that it's not, it's in a sense, it's under the license, it was that if they need less, they tell you. Then they told you at first, they need less, just give them this. And then as it's gone along, what I sense is that just kind of, in the last few years, just went along, that your folks probably don't even know what the license says. They just gave, when Pat would let them know a number, they'd give that 3% more. So the concept was, and it was, the reason it works in Douglas is because of what everyone said, and Kevin said, that it's such a conservative town. So the idea was to have a cap, which can relate, obviously has to be 5% or below. And then each year, if they don't need it, they don't need it. That way, they're not constraining themselves for 10 years. If the program changed a lot, if something unexpected happened, but by the same token, we have a history here of taking far less than they could have had, but they didn't ask you for that larger amount.
I think to visualize our second year in the license, it went up to 100,000 for our annual budget. This year, we just got there. So we're at our second year in the license, and we're 10 years in. So we've never asked for the full capacity. And again, whether it's a technology-driven department, we're up and down sometimes. We don't know, the PA system shut down on us, and that was a huge, so sometimes we have big spikes. And so, we do our best to even it out too, where, we're not hitting the town with these giant requests, because that gets a lot of red flags raised too. So we're always trying to get ahead of things, and, just to
This year,
visualize.
your operating capital was 100 grand.
Or operating, not
Operating
capital, but
budget,
operating
yeah.
budget, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you work with Gene on the budget?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, very, very, it's under a microscope, and there's a lot of preferences within the municipality too, where we don't want to hit too much on one year, so I'm trying to spread things out, and, there's a lot to it, so we just try our best to at least, I guess what I'm trying to highlight is that we've been able to go up a much higher, but we've never gone for more than we need. So
Yeah.
we're always keeping it right where we need it, and for a while, the 3% a year was working for us at the rate that we had it, so.
it's almost like what you guys are doing annually. It's like when we go to Charter, or still Charter, or is it Spectrum, or?
Spectrum's a brand name.
Yeah.
So when we go to Charter, it's a matter of, it's almost like a budget request. And that's how we look at it. And like I said, there's one number that's saying, based off of our contract, you can go to X. So, and all Pat will go to is say, okay, I've crunched the numbers, I sat down with Gene, we balanced a spreadsheet, and we need, you're entitled to 131,000, Pat says, I need 100. So that way, we never ask for that additional 30, like, there's no buffers. Gene doesn't agree with anybody putting a cushion in things. If she's analyzed and looked at his operating budget and says, you need $100,000, it's 100 grand, and he won't ask for a penny more.
I was growing up, I remember the kids would say, well, how did something cost? And he goes, what do I care? My dad paid for it. And I remember growing up thinking, well, it's all in the family. I mean, I would, not like, my dad would be different than, and so that's the way the town looks at it. Let me just, because you're a little time. So on the capital, the other good news is this, John, that.
I gotta run out 1 second.
Oh, sure.
I'm doing a vehicle
Yeah,
swap.
is that my notes have at least that it has the same dollar amount they'd like, keeping the same, the 169 is capital, but they got paid 100,000 within 30 days, and then 50,000 on the first anniversary, and 19,000 on the 5th anniversary. And let me take a look at my notes. I know they can spread that out more so. I guess let's see, I'm looking at my notes here, 1 second. So at least in the last discussion, my notes have that, and I know it's a preference usually for the company to pay it over 10 years, and there's inflation benefits and everything else, and you don't have interest rates. So that they could take the 169,000, same as last time, rates are up, and the subscribers are not down very much. They could take that over 10 years. So last time, again, it was 100,000 up front, 50,000 on the first anniversary. They would take that over 10 years. So that'd be the capital, 169,000 paid over 10 years. Are you doing, where are you guys on HD channels?
Wait a second. So on the page 9, it says 239,000 for capital.
Well, that's their need, but I'm saying, as I'm sitting at the table, as a deal, that's the best they could do, that they would do a license for $169,000 paid over 10 years. That's, they couldn't take a penny less, but they would, to try to sit down, get it done. The idea was to meet, come in with numbers that work, that they would do $169,000 paid over 10 years. Their needs are greater than that. And of course,
Right, 169,000 for 10 years. And the operating,
would be 100 and,
That's the 119.
no. Well, but the number would be, and you need to, check this on the 5%. The number in the year 10 would be 142,714. So it'd be per year, 142,714, increase 3% a year with the same concept that, and we could change it around that, we don't have to say that, again, that they would write you to take less. We could put it down that the first year payment, I think we could go with the first year payment that would give you the number, which is 119. And then we'd have something that says, each year, this is the cap, and they would tell you that if they needed more than 3% a year from the 119, they'd give you, X days' notice.
has the town considered just going over the percentage of gross revenue?
We could certainly do that. We could certainly do that.
This is just so confusing.
Yeah.
Plus,
Yeah.
isn't it cleaner just to go with the percentage of gross revenue? What do you need instead of plus 3%?
Well, this is the charter, to change the companies. This is where they were last time. We were working with the same paradigm. If your preference would be that we do a percentage of gross revenue, then I'd say we would do 5% with the idea that, again, they would tell you at a point, if you wanted to. I mean, the issue is, we could do 5%, but then the question becomes,
A full percent, a 4.5%, a 4, whatever the need is.
yeah, well, I could do we don't have, one of the things that would help, if we're going to do that, I need,
I'm not saying we're going to do it, I'm asking if the town,
I think it's, what it does is
it's cleaner.
Well, it gets them away from this idea that if they need less, they would take less. But in order to talk to them about that, what I would need is, I need the gross revenue franchise fee sheets, let's say for the life, they don't have them, I think they can write you. Can you give us you do an annual, give them, I guess you do it annually here, but they need the gross revenue sheets for, let's say, the last 2 years, so they can understand what the revenues are.
Can I quantify that? Is it gross revenues for charter, or is it gross revenues for charter for this franchise in the town?
This franchise.
Okay.
Yeah.
For this franchise.
I was
Yeah.
going to say, charter's gross revenues, yeah, sure, we'll take that.
So John thinks, as is typically done in the Comcast license, or other licenses, is the town get a percentage of gross revenue. In order to do that calculation, we would need a breakdown of the gross revenue for the last, let's say, 2 years, so we could see what that means.
Instead of capital with 3% every, it's just messy. You clean it, just,
Well, we're just talking about the operating now, right? Yeah, just the operating we're talking
well, it
about.
could be everything.
Yeah, well, I think their preference would do the capital as a set dollar amount, it's certainty, it's real things. But on the operating, I would say to these folks, and we'll talk about it, but that can work. The difference is that if you have a set dollar amount, they're going to give you that dollar amount, even if you think you don't need it. It's from your view of the world. So I think we should talk about that separately, but I think if,
That's a Gene conversation, because that gets tricky for us.
Yeah, I think if we just had something from you that showed that, then we could, discuss that possibility for sure. And
what the gross revenue, categories of revenue.
I mean, like, looking at it on the municipal finance side, I mean, for you guys, absolutely, I agree with you. It's a cleaner way to go about doing things, is you're saying, okay, well, Douglas's gross revenue is X, we're going to give you 3% or whatever the hell it is, and kind of going from there. And Douglas operating the way that it does is we use what we need. So if he, let's say gross revenue numbers were, $230,000, he needs 100. There's $130,000 surplus, and that becomes how does that get dealt with? Because as it's
Well, you
My
keep
idea
you
would
keep
be
it in a
directed
cable.
revenue that would come towards cable, so we couldn't then, at the end of the year, we have to have a balance sheet that
Yeah,
says
but,
zero.
well, no, you'll have a special account on it, so it can roll over.
So
But,
we do an enterprise account.
yes, or one of two accounts. But the thing we'll need to talk about is that they like the world they have now, where they have this set dollar amount cap, but could ask for less. So I think when we talk separately, with John, that we need to understand how wedded they are to that, because it's unique to the kind of their view of the world, that if we want less, just give us less. And in that world, the set dollar amount, but this is what we need, actually works better for them. And it's almost like it wouldn't work anywhere else, but it works here because of this, they're so conservative with their spending of dollars, it kind of comes up as you have the most certainty of dollars, but that certainty is capped by the frugality. So let's separately, or another time, let's.
Yeah, I'd just like to look at what,
Yeah.
his suggestion and.
Yeah, but you see, the issue, we need that to figure out what percentage you would be at, but it still doesn't work as well for you, because it doesn't have a set dollar amount, and more importantly, it doesn't give you the chance to say, we want less. I mean, you're not going to be asking for less if it's a percentage.
Amend the license.
Yeah, that's true, but
It'd
it's,
be more, as long as if it's based off of gross revenue and not profitability, it's pretty much it's a static number, it's pretty close to it.
well, it depends what the revenue happens with the revenues. But, all right, so wanted to start,
Well, you guys can think about it.
yeah.
I'm just throwing it
Can you give us 2 years, it's this quarter, 2-year breakdown? You know what the sheets look like. It's got the revenues and the different
out.
categories.
This town doesn't have it.
Well, you would have it,
No, I know.
but I don't know whether they keep
We
it.
don't do a percentage of gross revenue for this town.
I know, but you still, doesn't mean the company doesn't have what those revenues were.
Yeah, we know what the revenue is. Cable revenue number?
Yeah, give us the cable revenues for the last 8 quarters,
Last 2 years.
2 years. And try to break it down a little bit, break it down into, cable service equipment, advertising, break it down into,
Yeah, I'm just saying, because you're not paid that way, we don't have
I
it
know.
set up that way.
well, that's right, you'd have to ask your financial people. My guess is that they have it, they just haven't done it.
They know what cable revenue is.
Yeah, but I'm sure they have their category. I mean, it's not like they just keep numbers for towns, they keep it for themselves, so.
Or most of the other towns doing
Percentage of gross revenue.
percentage of gross revenue. I was like,
Yeah, well, that's the more common.
With no capital. They just throw it all in one number. Like, I don't understand why everyone, this distinction between capital. I mean, you get a pile of money, spend it however you want.
Well, there's a distinction because depending on what you need, if you just get a percent, you can always do,
I'd just be curious to see what that looks like, you know what I mean, just in real numbers. Yeah, yeah.
well, I'll tell you what.
the only way.
How many, I did let me just say, I did the numbers here. Yeah. Yeah. Just to say, yes, thank you.
take it easy, Brad. Hey, if I don't see you, Merry Christmas.
Thank you. My estimate here on the revenue is, it's probably about, it's between 2.6 and 2.85 million dollars a year. I mean, I used using, I don't know, using $120 or 110, I don't know what your typical revenue is per subscriber per month, but if it's 115, I'll just pick in between. If it's $115 per month, I use the last official subscriber number, 1969 times 115 times 12, or $2,717,220 times 5%. So at 5%, it'd be $135,861 a year for operating. That's using a $115 per subscriber amount per month, be $135,000. I think, what would make sense for these folks is that, on the operating, is that that you might even pick a little below 5%, and you could always, if you needed to go down, I think we could write in the license that if they wanted to bring it down, they don't have to amend the license, they can just tell you. That way,
We were doing a 5% off a gross revenue model, we'd never do any real adjustment to it. All the adjustments would be done based off of an enterprise account, and then Pat drawing off of that account on an as-needed basis.
right, unless you say, right, well, if you just, so if you did it, so I would suggest, I like being a little below the 5% in the world we live in. So let's say we did something like, just to throw it out, 4.85%. So, give a little cap room there. So at 4.85%, and then it'll be a full, when I do a license, John, I'm sure, it's a full definition, so there's no exclusion. It's, it's subscriber and non-subscriber revenue. It's, it's an advertising, home shopping. There's no exclusions. There's no basis really to have an exclusion from gross revenue, just like you folks include all your revenue. So it'd be a full definition of gross revenue. And potentially, and we'll talk about something like 4.85%, a little less than the 5%. You lose anyway, you lose a little bit anyway. There's the license fee to the state and the town, $1.30. So 4.85%, but in addition to that, the idea, at least license I do, you would have some capital dollars. And then,
But you're saying bundle the capital and operating into one percentage, and then we just take that and use
Yeah.
it the way we need it?
Correct.
yeah, but it's not a matter of math. It's a matter of, the reason capital is, in most licenses, for at least most companies, outside of operating is because capital is outside of the 5% cap of the franchise fee.
Right.
And so, we can work on our side if we're going to do, and you could do a percentage, in theory, they're better off doing it, from their perspective, a set dollar amount for capital. In theory, you could do a percentage for capital too. So I think what we should do on our side is crunch the numbers and see if there's a change of paradigm where they think, okay, this works as well then, and they would do a percentage of gross revenue for operating, and they'd figure out what they want to do for capital. But to do that, we would need the 2 years of revenues broken down so we see what they are.
Yep.
Okay, and then we can, we'll meet and figure out what that paradigm would look like. And then, suggest that as the license terms. High definition, are you doing the HD channels?
Have to pay for it.
They'd have to pay for what, equipment and coders or what?
They'd have to pay for a circuit. I think it's all inclusive,
And how much is that?
$800 a month,
You charge
$10
them
grand a year.
for HD?
Yeah.
And I can take a look at it.
Per channel.
One channel, just one, okay. And,
That would replace one of the three.
yeah, I haven't looked at, looked at some of their licenses. Is that, you don't have to raise your right hand. Oh, yeah.
It's a separate transaction outside the license.
Really? Interesting. And electronic program guide, do you do anything with that at this point for PEG? No, okay.
What do you mean by that?
Well, to put PEG on the electronic program guide so people can see what programming is coming up and they can use their video recorder to
Well, whatever is done now, that's what we do.
I don't think they do it. My guess is they don't do it, but, some companies, some places are starting to use the electronic program guide for PEG. Companies are dabbling in that a little bit. Some towns that have it because they all have the same head end. And they have from the company. All right. There's a senior discount in the license. Where are you guys on senior discount?
We don't do that, it's a rate issue. We don't include it in the license.
Do you do side letters?
No.
No, so no senior discounts anymore. Okay. So, Kevin, that's something we'll have to talk about next time we meet. The senior discount is totally voluntary. It is a rate issue. So they have every right to say that they're not going to agree to it in the license or out of the license, and you have a right to say, well,
As long as the seniors aren't mad at me, that's all I care about. I don't like them getting feisty.
well, then you'll have to have a show trial.
Yeah.
All right. Cable casting, their current locations, the library wasn't,
Here, We run cable casting from here, we have a live connection at the high school, and then we're looking to,
We're looking at the library issue.
Library.
So let me ask, are you guys doing
Is it an iNet? Is it, what is it?
video,
we have fiber.
fiber, yeah, but not an
We
iNet?
built?
No, yours,
We built it.
yeah.
So we'll give it to you as is or whatever, but we no longer maintain it.
It's not an iNet,
Fiber,
though.
it shouldn't be an issue. It's all fiber?
Yeah.
So but it's video return. So is your fiber latched to your system, though? I don't understand. If you give it to them, how do they, is it parcel of your system? Is it latched together or something, or?
I don't know how
Yeah.
it works.
Yeah, well, you have to find that out, because, I mean, they can't, you know, they may,
Do you know how it runs?
As far as adding a new location,
No.
no, you know,
Existing fiber.
it's Charter Fiber, but you have, yeah, you don't know whether it's,
well, I don't know how you mean.
Come back here?
yes.
Yeah, it comes into the building, yeah.
And it eventually goes from here to the
We
head end.
sent, yeah, so we're sending the
What's
broadcasting,
your question?
Well, right now, you connect the high school, does high school go to their head end, or does the high school come here?
it comes here to our
Sure.
server.
You sure? Okay. So
sure-
if
pretty
that's
sure that's how it
correct,
operates.
then the high school,
Here to our head end.
Correct.
yes. Now, here to the head end, that's yours. You know, that's not going to be theirs. From the high school to here, that's currently yours too. And I think their position would probably be, you know, that's part of cable, PEG access. They wouldn't want to take responsibility for that unless, you know, we worked it out as part of the deal. But, I mean, if these folks built it, they've been maintaining it, why would you want to take it over? They have certain rights under the FCC order vis-à-vis their maintenance, but,
It's just leased fiber from Charter, is about how we're looking at it.
Yeah.
It's conduit. So, yeah, I don't see why I don't think they'd want to give it up, and I don't see why we'd want to take it
Yeah,
over.
no, that's what I
Right.
said. It would stay as is.
Yeah.
right, well, all right, I thought you say. So then,
To add the
and
library.
the library issue is, the library is how far from here?
It's right down the road,
Okay.
0.3 mile, 0.3 of a mile.
Okay, so the issue is, are you folks extending video return systems at the current time? Do you have engineers?
You have to pay for it.
Right, so could you get them a cost, well, that'll get you the building and the address, and if you can get them a cost from your engineering department, what it would cost to connect those two? And they can,
What to?
the library and this building.
So that we could do live content from downtown.
Here. Yeah, like the others.
Right.
And there's
Right,
fiber.
and that was in the current license.
What's that?
But they told you at the time they didn't need, they hold off, so that they would continue it as a license requirement. But if you can get them a cost, then they can also look at other options. But if you can give, and we can give you an email on this, you give them a cost from engineering, what it would cost to build that.
So in my mind, like, so we currently don't have any equipment down there. We have a strand of fiber that's from Charter that's there. It's just not terminating to anything, right?
I don't even think we have fiber at the library right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would be a new location. It was approved on the last license to be one of our possible live origination points, but it got voted down in cable committee, so.
Charter's point, we'd need an equipment cost that's on that, and then it's just routing at that point.
Why did they vote it down?
At the time, it was, there was going to be costs for, what is it called? The transmitters, and that would be down there, that would send it up.
The equipment?
Yeah, and then I think at the time, we were doing other upgrades and stuff, and it was just, they compartmentalized, and then it just never popped back up, so.
So it hasn't been voted on to move forward?
Correct, it hasn't been voted to move forward.
Yeah, well, voted means, yeah, I mean, it was supposed to be done, but they said hold off, so they don't really need a vote.
That was like year
They need
2
to
or
tell
3
you,
of the last license.
but, I mean, it's in the license, they just said hold off. So the idea would be, you give us a cost, and they'll take a look at it, and, you know, in the current license, it's your cost, not their cost. And so you give us the cost of what it'll cost to do it, because they, like to know what that is. And then, let's say the cost is $10,000, then we could talk about whether their position is that that's your obligation. You could pass it to subscribers, or in the totality of the whole deal, they say, all right, then, we'll use some capital for that. So we can negotiate how it's done. On the current license, it's Charter's obligation, and you could pass it through to your subscribers. If you get the engineering cost for that, then I think we can put it in the pot and figure out how to do it.
I think the big associated cost is going to be running a strand of fiber into the library.
Right.
It's usually not cheap, unless it's gotten cheaper. So they have no optical, like no fiber in the building right now, correct?
Yeah, I don't believe so. I don't believe nothing was actually installed there.
So why do they want to put it there? What is it?
Well, so the library sits right in front of where we have the Oktoberfest every year, and probably one of my biggest requests I've had from residents and people is like, could we have some kind of live coverage from Oktoberfest? And I thought, because we do set up cameras right in front of the library, and I said, if we had some way of getting the live origination right to the library, and the library has, they have functions and events there too that, just like the senior center, which, they maybe benefit from having a live, read or whatever, the events that they hold there. But mainly driven by the Oktoberfest idea that we could have live coverage straight from Main Street of the event as it unfolds and stuff like that. And there's a couple different things.
Let's get a cost, because if the cost is high, they're likely going to say, well, it's not worth it. So if you can get a cost from your engineers. So we have two things. We have the 2 years of gross revenues in categories, so we can see what the categories are, if you get that from your financial folks. And then the cost, and I'll give you an email on this, the cost for the connect the library to the municipal center by fiber and any electronics.
Is it on Depot Street?
It's right at the end of this street, so if you go down Depot and you're gonna pull on a Main Street, go right, the library is right there across the street.
So it's a different street address, Main Street?
Yeah, it's Main Street address.
And then we'll take, with those financial numbers, I'll go over the different paradigms with you on operating and capital, so that when we meet next time, they'll be able to tell you, here's, if they're going to do a different paradigm, which, may work fine, then here's what they'll be looking for. And then, I guess that's really about it.
Yeah, I think we're open to considering it, you know what I mean, and looking at the numbers and considering what.
Has anyone done, has anyone, so you leave HD out of the license, has any charter community that you've dealt with moved ahead with high definition?
Nope.
Yeah. And the company doesn't think it's helpful to the company. In other words, doesn't think that having a clearer picture is to charter's benefit. They don't see any
Not
value.
currently.
Yeah.
So are any of with the whole PEG, which is the public access stuff, is any of that like showing up under streaming, like on the app? Like if you have the Charter app to watch TV, can you get local access through that?
I don't know the answer to that.
Because I know, believe it or not, even the seniors are getting more tech savvy, and they're going to smart TVs with the apps.
Well, you're putting everything on Facebook, and you're streaming everything anyway, right?
Well,
Yeah.
we do have a YouTube channel, and the things that.
But I have to say this, you guys focus more on cable though, because of the nature of the community. I mean, the real focus is to get it on TV. It's a secondary thing.
Well, yeah, sure, we have 24/7, playback of all of our meetings and the public, and the educational channel. We're all full of, all kinds of programming on there too. But yeah, we do have a YouTube channel online, but that was something that people had asked Kevin about, is if we could get streaming on the app, the actual Charter app, that, if they would house that, but.
That's a good question. Okay. That's all, that's good. I think we've gone through a lot. I think if we get those numbers, then I think we'll be able to, give you a number back at the next meeting, and maybe, wrap up a deal, then or the meeting thereafter. I mean, I think we'll have to talk to these guys, but we do know that they're not looking to spend money they don't have to spend, it may be that we don't build that into the license, we'll have to figure it out on this end, but you do know that if they're asking for something, they think they need it. You know, that's what they stand for better or for worse.
Sounds good.
Good, well, thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.